By the time the last stallholder packed away his wares, a hush had settled over Chipping Norton that seemed borrowed from the old stones themselves. The market square slept beneath its lamps, and the tower of St. Mary's Church loomed high above, stern and watchful. Mr. Thomas Willoughby, a solicitor's clerk visiting from Oxford, had stayed behind after dusk. He was a cautious man, precise in habit and proud of it. With the verger's key in his coat and a ledger under his arm, he declared he would complete the parish accounts before returning to the inn. The landlord had smiled without amusement. "If you hear bells tonight," he said, "you won't be the one ringing them." The church received him like a deep breath. His lantern cast its narrow circle of gold across the stone floor, the air thick with the scent of wax and age. The pews crouched in rows like old men waiting for judgment. On a table near the chancel sat 3 donation chests, brass-bound and heavy with dust. He set down his satchel, opened the first lid, and began his work. The first chest held coins and buttons, the second, prayer books and receipts. He wrote carefully in his ledger, the steady rhythm of his pencil echoing in the stillness. Only when he reached into the third chest did another sound intrude, the unmistakable tread of a boot upon stone. He looked up, the pencil frozen between finger and thumb. The nave stretched away in shadow. "Verger," he called. No reply came, but the footsteps sounded again, higher this time, as if from the tower stairway. Another, slower, deliberate. "Verger?" he repeated, though he already knew he was alone. The door to the tower was half open. Beyond it spiraled the narrow stair, its stone hollowed smooth by centuries of soles. Mr. Willoughby held the lantern forward. The first few steps waited like a dare. A cold breath descended from above, smelling faintly of iron and damp rope. He set one foot upon the stair, then drew it back. "Not yet," he muttered, and turned away. His work awaited him. The pencil resumed its scratching. The sound from the tower did not. Then, softly, the rope near the west door stirred. It lifted perhaps an inch from the floor and fell again, as though testing its own weight. Mr. Willoughby stared at it. The coil shivered once more, then lay still. He swallowed, closed the chest, and told himself the night air must have moved it. But reason, as it turned out, was not the only thing stirring. Moments later, the noise returned, a shuffle, a drag, and something that might have been a sigh. The tower was awake. Mr. Willoughby took up the lantern, telling himself that London men do not fear provincial ghosts. He opened the stair door again. The darkness beyond was thick and upright. Each step protested as he climbed, not loudly, but as though unwilling to serve. A draught moved against his face, bringing with it the scent of wet wool and cold stone. The rope that ran upward beside the stair bore a fresh polish where something had gripped it. His fingers brushed it, and came away sticky with oil. Halfway up, he paused. From above came the slow creak of timber. He could hear nothing else, yet the air seemed crowded. "Verger?" he tried again, his voice barely more than breath. The stair gave no answer, but a whisper, a single, faint syllable, slipped down to meet him. It might have been a prayer or a warning. When he reached the belfry, the lantern's light fell across the great bell. Its clapper hung still. No figure stood beside it, no sign of movement at all, and yet the floor beneath the beam was darker than the rest, as though shadow had taken root there. The air trembled just enough to ruffle the flame. Then the rope moved, drawn tight as if under a hand unseen. Mr. Willoughby felt the heat leave his body. The lantern fogged with the breath of another. A smell, not unpleasant but terribly human, of sweat, tallow, and iron filled the air. He could not see a man, but he saw where one had been. A faint print of a boot in the dust, the shape of fingers at the rope's base. He watched as the rope lifted, fell, and lifted again. The bell gave a small, sorrowing note, too light to carry through the stone walls, but enough to make his heart tremble. He did not run. He simply backed away, keeping his eyes fixed on the rope as though it were a creature that might bite. On the first landing, he stumbled, caught his coat on the iron hinge, and swore under his breath. The stair seemed to breathe with him all the way down. When he stepped once more into the nave, his breath escaped him in a single, grateful burst. The church was silent again. He gathered his papers with shaking hands, closed the chests, and locked the great west door behind him. At the king's head, the landlord looked up as he entered. "Well?" he asked mildly. "All counted?" Mr. Willoughby took the glass that was poured for him and stared into it. "Who was Mr. Joyce?" he asked. "I seem to have met him." The landlord's cloth paused mid-polish. "Henry Joyce, the vicar, long ago, hanged from the church tower for defying the king. Some say he still tends to his parish." Mr. Willoughby did not answer. He retired to bed, where he dreamed of ropes that climbed themselves. The following evening he returned. Pride, more than bravery, took him there. The verger handed him the key with a knowing nod. "Lock up proper," he said, "and do remember your manners." The church welcomed him differently this time, not as a stranger, but as a man who had already been measured. He set his lantern low, worked quickly and well, and did not look toward the tower. Yet as the last entry went into his ledger, a sound like a sigh rose from the stair. The bell rope lifted once, then settled. Mr. Willoughby stood still for a long moment. He felt the peculiar peace of a task finished under supervision. Closing the ledger, he turned toward the door. "Good night, Mr. Joyce," he said softly. The silence accepted it. Outside, the square was cold and wide, but it no longer felt unfriendly. In the morning, a letter awaited him confirming that his figures were correct and his diligence noted. He smiled at that. Before leaving Chipping Norton, he walked once more to St. Mary's and stood beneath the tower. His hand rested against the stone, cool but faintly alive beneath the sun. "Rest easy," he murmured. A rook called from above, and the bells, still as death, seemed for a moment to remember what they were for. Years later, in another town, Mr. Willoughby would hear a single, distant toll as dusk gathered, a sound so like St. Mary's that it drew his hand to his heart. He would not be afraid. He would simply nod, as one gentleman acknowledges another across a crowded room. Please subscribe to this channel to be alerted to the next episode of Ghosts of the Cotswolds.